little foreign when you saw it. Okay, your goal here is to determine y squared. I have a parabola that opens left or right. Get all the ones with the square to one side. So both y's go to the left-hand side. It follows your format. Keep your format handy. You have to know these two formulas. Okay? All right. Bring the y's to one side, keep the rest to the other side. Complete the square. Take the middle term, half of the middle term, 3. 3 squared, 9. Don't forget to add it to both sides. Normally what happens is, if you don't add it to the other side, sometimes when you go to factor out, it doesn't come out evenly. Look again, maybe you forgot to add it. Bring down your perfect square, combine like terms, and notice in front of the x has to be a coefficient of 1. Factor out the negative 8. This right here is 4p. This lines up to your 4p. Take out your vertex. P says it's negative. It's a y squared. It's going to open left. Start with your vertex. Go over 2. I wrote it out in formulas, but it's so much easier to do it off the graph. It is exactly what you're doing now. You're saying h plus p. Negative 2, move it over 2 spaces, find your focus, move it over 2 spaces, make a line, find your directrix. And then your intercepts. Anybody can't do any of these? Anything that bothers you guys? Anthony, you're good with this? Yeah. Your intercepts, can everybody do the intercepts? Yeah, we can see that there's no y-intercepts. So that you know when there's no y, take the square root of a negative number, but you have to show me algebraically. So do the algebra part, plug it in. I don't care if you plug it into the first one, this one, it doesn't matter to me. It's all transformations of the same equation. So as long as you transformed it properly, you should be okay. The one good thing to do, maybe throw the y-intercept, when y is 0, the x-intercept, when y is 0, maybe throw that into the original one, only because if you made a mistake over here, and you do it into the original one, and the intercept doesn't look possible, that means you made a mistake when you completed the square, or whatever it is you were doing to it. So if you go back to the original one at some point, and I wouldn't go back to substitute the x's in, because you're going to have to solve and factor it. I mean, it's still doable, but at least you can get through that part. Leave your answers as fractions, not decimals. Questions? Yes. Yeah, because x has to have a coefficient of 1. X has to be 1. What you have to do is look, whatever's in front of the x, you have to factor that out. Let's see your formula. Coefficient of y is 1, coefficient of x is 1. That has to come out. Good? All right, make sure you're up to this, guys. All right, again, a y square. So you're going to get it to one side, the y's. You only have 4x to the other side. So complete your square. Don't forget to add to both sides. X has to have a coefficient of 1. Just like y has to have a coefficient of 1. So factor it out. Line this up to 4p. 4p is the most forgotten little part of this, because you're not used to seeing this. So that's the 4p. At the end, or at this point when you do your vertex, and you're looking to see if p is negative or positive, maybe that's a little clue to see. Remember I told you, make sure you write your vertex, make sure you write p equals, focus, directrix. Write those so that you know you have all the parts. Again, I wrote the formulas out, but it's so much easier just to go off the vertex, 1 to the right, 1 unit to the right, 1 unit to the left. Don't worry about the negative or positive as long as you're making the movement. And the intercepts, God bless you, you're going to find here, when you take the square root, don't forget the plus or minus. So you're going to have to do it 2 times. 2 plus 2, 2 minus 2. That gives you these 2 points. This one should be the same. You should find that one. You guys good with this? Questions? There's got to be some questions. No? Okay. Directrix? Wait, what's D? Or P? D? Yeah. Directrix? Yeah. The directrix is a line. So here's my vertex. My vertex is -1, 2. P is positive, so it's opening to the right. Did you find P? Yeah. So P is 1, right? Now, focus is inside. Slide this over 1. So if I slide it over 1, this becomes 0, 2. This is my focus. My directrix says slide back 1. It's a line. So since you moved your x, it's going to be an x equal. And whatever this is, add 1 to that. Move it over 1. X is -2. If it helps you, Brian, make the point like this first. -2, 2, and then put a line through it, and then make the x equal line. If it's a y squared, it's going to have an x equal. If it's an x squared, it's going to have a y equal. And the thing is, you move the x, so that tells you x equal. That's an easier way to do it. Like I have to change the x over here, I have an x equal line. When you do this one, and you have to change the y, then it's a y equal. Easiest way to remember your directrix. I wrote your formula down, but I really, unless you're good at memorizing and you want to memorize those, you see there's a big difference when we do the x, because then it's h, k plus p. So it's completely the opposite. But you almost have to think it on your graph before you write down the formula, so you just might as well do it on your graph. All right, was it this one that said multiply by 4? Yeah, when I cut and pasted I pasted it onto my paper. I must have cut the whole line, but you guys know we multiply by 4. I don't have it on my sheet, just on yours.
74 exists.
Oh, it's in 74? I still don't have it on my sheet. So I must have somehow just got it on yours. I don't know how I did it. Alright, so guys, we're going to get rid of your fraction. Multiply by 4. Now you can see your x squareds are here. Get your x squareds by themselves. So you add 5 to both sides, or get rid of that 5, subtract 5. And I just flipped them around for blushing. Complete the square. Factor out both your coefficients for your x and your y have to be 1. On your 4p, you have an x squared, and p is positive, opens up. Again, work your focus 1 up, your directrix 1 down. And because you're changing the y, your directrix line is going to be a y equals. Find your intercepts. This is nice because the squared part has no real intercept, so you don't have to take the square root and worry about that. Good? They really weren't hard. They're just repetitious. That's what I'm trying to get you used to, because I realize you haven't seen this version of the parabola. It's a little different, but it's a really good way. Otherwise, if you looked at that parabola, you wouldn't even know it was an x squared, but you wouldn't even know where to graph this. You wouldn't find the vertex. So it gives you a lot to tell about your parabolas. Again, get rid of your fraction, multiply by 4. You have a y squared this time. We found p to be 1, so it's opening to the right. Okay. questions on this? Other than didn't do? Can you do these? Was this the last one I gave you? We have one more? Alright. And the numbers have so far been coming out pretty nicely. This one a little different. Yeah, this one, God bless you. Not that it's different, but the numbers didn't come out in whole numbers. So you kind of had to work with the fraction. Do the fraction on your calculator. You get the x squared and the x on one side. Factor out. Make sure the coefficients stay 1. Do your intercepts. Now your y-intercept, you can see that your y-intercept, just leave it as a fraction, because if you put it in a decimal, it's a repeating decimal. Your x-intercept, you can see that you have 2 of them. So you know you're going to be taking the square root of something. If it's a radical, if it's a radical, just leave it in radical form. Just make sure it's in reduced radical form. Make sure you reduced it down to the lowest terms. Leave it in radical form. If you want to guesstimate it, like radical 6 is between 4 and 9, so between 2 and 3 is your point. So if I take -2 and I add it, it puts me a little bit over and a little bit that way. So you're in the ballpark. Just kind of guesstimate it so that you know you're on the right track. Okay, what I want you all to do, so this is the last one, right? Is to do the next one. Everything. It's my first step. Rihanna, what's my first step?
Oh, to move the 8y 9 to the side.
Good. Let's move this to the other side. And we're going to leave room so we can complete the square. Okay, we can add to one side, add to the other. So Jason, how did you complete the square? Okay, so half of 2. And then right here, -1 squared. We squared it and we added to both sides. Right? This gives you -8. Next step. Carlos, what's my next step? Factor out this. Okay. +1. Good. Alright, this is equal to 4p. If it helps you, set this up underneath it. The h always goes with the x, no matter what side of the equal sign it's on. So -8 is equal to 4p. And that shows us it opens down. Write your information down along the side. What's your vertex? Alger, what's your vertex? 1, -1. Boys in the back, you good with this? 1, -1? Okay, so we sketch. We know it's going to open down. 1, -1. It's opening down. My focus, and I like to write it here. So my focus is going to move 2 down. Danielle, what's my focus point? Danielle Pinto. What is it?
0.
I'm moving down from here. It keeps the same x value, but the y is going to move down from -1 down 2 more. -3. Good. Now I'm going to move up 2 and make a directrix line. I change the y, so it's a y equal. So Amber, what's my directrix line? Okay, so here I am at the 1, -1. When I move vertically, I change the y's. So I take a look at my coordinate for -1, and I have to go up 2. One will put me at the 0, another one puts me at the 1. Just do it right on the graph. Don't use the formulas, do it on the graph. So your directrix is y is equal to 1. your focus is, whoops, 1, -3.
You just move it down to
Move it down to,
every time.
well, whatever your P is,
Uh,
whatever P value is. But don't worry about whether P is negative or positive. The focus has to be inside the parabola, the directrix on the opposite side. So one's going to move in, one's going to move out. And if you go vertically, you change the Y's. Jonathan?
How do you find the vertex?
The vertex, take it out of here. The X always come out the opposite way. 1, the Y, -1. Just come out the opposite way. The intercepts, we have an x-intercept when y is 0. Okay, so come down, take the last one, doesn't matter which one you take. So if y is 0, we plug it in here. So this is equal to 0 plus 1, -8. As soon as you go to take the square root, can't do it. No real x-intercepts. Does our graph confirm that we didn't cross the x-axis? Yes. Okay, y-intercepts. When x is 0, I'm going to go back to the very first one. This is going to give me a 0. This is going to give me a 0. I'm going to get 8y plus 9 equals 0. Move my 9 and divide by 8. And that looks about right, because this is at the -1. I'm slightly below that, so my graph is probably a little wider than I drew it. But I'm a sketch, so I'm in the ballpark. So here's my y-intercept.